Thanks for tuning in to the Mission Matters podcast, where we feature successful, mission-driven leaders committed to creating a positive change in the world. Our mission with this channel is to inspire other leaders by providing industry insights, new ideas, and inspiring stories from the pros.
Well, hello, Paul Feith here, host of this show where I interview business leaders heading up mission-focused organizations in the nonprofit space, leading from the heart and making a difference in their communities. Today's episode is sponsored by our very own Gregory Media, affectionately known as PGM, a digital marketing agency right here in downtown Naperville. In case you didn't know, PGM is one of a few thousand certified B corporations, putting people and planet over profit. To learn more about the services of PGM and what they offer, please visit paulgregorymedia.com. With me today, I'm very excited, Katrina, PGM's own social media manager. She manages everything from social, organic to paid, growth to engagement, and of course, content creation. Welcome, Katrina.
Hi, Paul. Happy to be here.
I'd love to just get you to introduce yourself and tell everyone a little bit about you.
Sure. Well, I've been with Paul Gregory Media for over a year as a social media manager. And prior to that, I was a freelance social media manager and had worked for an association for a little while and an agency in Chicago briefly. So overall, I have 6 years of professional social media management experience. And the landscape has changed very much in just 6 years. So it's exciting to talk about this topic that is ever evolving.
It has changed a lot. What actually got you interested in it in the first place? What attracted you to social media?
So I got into social media by accident. I went to school for English, and my primary focus was academic research and writing. And that led me to a marketing internship at a local association dedicated to manufacturing organizations. They needed a marketing and membership associate. So I was basically the office firefighter, so to speak. I hopped from department to department that needed me, but they really wanted to boost their presence on social media. And because I happened to be the youngest person in that office, that duty fell to me. And I found that I actually had a very strong interest in the technical aspects of social media, as well as the creative aspects of social media, and flourished, really substantially grew our presence on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Primarily, we did have a presence on Twitter at the time that saw some growth as well, and felt very good to find a niche where I was very successful. And one of the pieces that surprised the board at the time was that there was an audience out there for us, because many people assumed that not enough people would be interested in manufacturing, let alone a nonprofit dedicated to manufacturing. And so to get to prove them wrong in the best way possible was extremely rewarding. And I decided that this was my niche, and I've been doing it ever since.
Wow. Well, that's a great start. And you mentioned something there about liking the technical aspect and the creative aspect. And it reminds me of a quote that I love. It's design is so simple, that's why it's so complicated. And it's by Paul Rand. It's one of my favorite quotes because he's talking about, to get something so simple like the design of a shoelace even, right? There's design that goes into that. It reminds me about social media in and of itself. It just requires so many different skill sets to make one post, which might look on the outside as very simple, but deep down, it requires many skill sets, and there's might even be a strategy behind that. So I wanted to tell us a little bit about that.
Well, there better be a strategy behind it. Otherwise,
you would think, I don't know.
You're throwing spaghetti at your newsfeed and seeing what sticks. Yeah, I think what's beautiful about social media and what is honestly underappreciated generally about social media is that it really is a Renaissance person's job. You have to have a lot of knowledge in many different specialties, and you need to be able to use that knowledge every single day, constantly. So, right, when you're creating content, there has to be a rhyme and reason behind the content you're creating. You have to know what it is your audience is looking for, what they will resonate with. You have to be sensitive to what's happening in the world, to be aware of trends, and to avoid, sticking your foot in your proverbial mouth. You need to have technical skills like graphic design and copywriting and even videography in some cases. And then additionally, you have to be willing to learn every single day about how each platform is updating its algorithm based on performance and customization. So when it comes to social media, it's far more than just popping your logo on a picture and hoping it goes somewhere, or just liking a post and hoping you gain some traction. There is a lot involved in a successful social media strategy. It is true, pretty much anyone with a computer or a smartphone can do social media, but whether or not they can do it well and whether or not you're going to see success as a marketing strategy, it depends largely on the amount of thought and effort and skill that is put into the content that is being shared on platforms.
Critical thinking, content strategy.
Absolutely.
It sounds like it's not for the faint of heart, but you see everybody doing social media. It's almost like if I were to draw a parallel in like a graphic design world, hand somebody Photoshop and they're automatically a graphic artist, right? Which obviously everybody knows is not the case. So you may have the tools, and you do need some skills to go with those tools, but it doesn't sound like it's for the faint of heart to do it well.
No, absolutely not. And that's a great analogy, because I think there are some smoke and mirrors surrounding the ease of social media management, because a lot of softwares are being advertised to make social media management so easy and so simple. But unless you understand how to use the tools deliberately and thoughtfully, you're really not going to make the most of them.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm not sure how to position this next question, but it's important, I think, for people to hear, like, how important is social media in the grand scheme of like marketing and business operations? How important is social media to be part of a marketing strategy for a business?
It's essential. It is essential. Now, while you don't necessarily have to be on every single platform, you want to be on at least two. And the key is to find which platform best represents your brand and is most likely to reach your target audience. So if you're a B2B business, right, primarily doing business with other organizations, you want to be on LinkedIn. Absolutely. If you're a B2C, right, you're going to want to be where your consumers are. So that'll be probably Facebook and Instagram. There's this great rule of thumb in social media management that says if you can't do all of them, right? And now there are so many that are cropping up left and right, Threads being the newest kid on the block, right? You do need to prioritize because you need to become extremely aware of the culture of a platform. And so it's better to do two platforms very well than to do all platforms if you don't feel comfortable on all platforms. It's really a quality situation here because social media is absolutely about brand awareness, for sure. That's the biggest reason you should be on social media, is to attract new eyeballs on your services and your products. Or if you're a not-for-profit, the kind of good work that you're doing in the world. But it's also about building a community around your brand or organization. And I think that's where a lot of social media managers maybe fall short, is they forget the community piece. On social media, you should be endeavoring to accomplish three things. And this is pretty universal on all platforms to some degree or another. You want to create a personal relationship with your audience. So giving your brand a face to the name, that's especially important on Facebook. You want to position yourself as a thought leader, someone who's an expert in your industry. That's essential for LinkedIn. And you want to come off as polished and established with support. And that's true for Instagram and frankly, all three. Twitter, right, which is now X, is considered a news sharing platform. So that's another place you can position yourself as a thought leader. But all of those key pieces of how to share about your organization, they all come into play on each platform, but how they come into play on each platform is distinct. So I think that if a business is assuming that social media is not as important of a piece of marketing as perhaps other means, such as Google Ads or advertising spots on television or streaming services, YouTube.
Sure. Yeah.
They're missing an enormous opportunity to paint their brand not just as a seller of services, but as an active mover and shaker in the community that they serve. I think that every organization, brand, regardless of profit or nonprofit, if you're doing it right, you play an important role in your community. And that's what social media seeks to put on display and share with people. And interestingly enough, the American consumer has become far more value-based than ever before. Now, Americans are especially concerned with how does this business treat their employees? How does this business participate in philanthropic efforts? What are the values of a business? And they're looking up those things prior to clicking the buy or donate button. And you have to, as a business, accept that that's a new trend and it's not going away. We live in an age of information now, and you can't hide behind office doors anymore. You do play an active role in the community, and it is very important to share that with your client base, customer base, donor base. If you don't do that, you'll be subject to maybe even more scrutiny. So social media. Yeah, social media is the place to make sure that the face that is presented to the world matches the values of an organization and puts them in their best light. It can also, while a lot of organizations are afraid to use social media because of the requirement for authenticity, and they're afraid of, well, what if I have a disgruntled client or a disgruntled employee and they say something on social media about me or about my business? I'm opening myself up to criticism. And while absolutely it makes you more accessible, it also gives you an opportunity to respond to that kind of potential negative feedback. Whereas, right, Yelp is merciless. So you don't really get to say anything.
Right.
Even Google reviews, right? But social media gives you a chance to acknowledge any sort of negative feedback, but also move forward and also build a foundation of positive interactions with the public and your client base, so that when those negative things come around, perhaps in a Facebook comment or you're tagged in a negative tweet, it will blow away very, very quickly, as long as you're prepared to handle it and you've built that foundation of a positive community prior to and maintain it after the fact. So I think any fear of negative implications of social media is based in some ignorance on how to use the platforms, and the pros far outweigh the cons. So absolutely, it's not just important; it's essential in today's day and age, based on market research.
Wow, and you kind of answered my next question, which is like, well, if it's so essential, what are they missing out on if it wasn't a part of their plan? And you kind of answered that already, and what they're missing out on, right?
Yeah, I mean, social media, a lot of brands use it primarily for sales, and they're missing the boat. There's so much you can do in regards to public relations on social media as well. It's a very variable marketing tool. And that's also why it requires skill and knowledge to use it successfully.
Again, not necessarily for the faint of heart, but somebody who's well-versed in it, I guess, can do very successful campaigns. And you mentioned like the three different things that social media is very important for. One of the first thing you mentioned is, having that connection and building that, getting them to get know you. And I always used to say once, we were just starting out in social media 17 years ago, we always say, you get to meet the man behind the green curtain, right? Because you never knew because of those, there was no remote workforces weren't really a thing, I guess. And so we were behind closed doors. And unless you came to meet us, you really didn't know who was doing the work and what kind of work we were doing unless you had a personal experience with that. So it's pretty interesting. I hear a lot of times where people will say, companies will say, well, it's a lot of fluff. We've run campaigns in the past and we're not seeing conversions. Whether let's say in a nonprofit world, conversion might mean a donation. In a for-profit world, it might mean a client. They're not getting clients. And I see campaigns and I'll look over, maybe the past year and I'll see, oh, well, they're getting leads. They're getting clicks. So the leads are getting to their site, but what's happening then? But it also bothers me a little bit, and because they're relying on social media as a sales tool as opposed to a marketing tool. Can you just say a little bit about that? You did touch on it already.
Sure, absolutely. Well, one of my main questions when a business says I'm not seeing conversions is I ask them if they're tracking their conversions. First of all, we can absolutely see on the back end what kind of impressions a post is getting, how many individuals specifically it reached, what sort of demographics have interacted with a post. But as far as who clicks the donate button or who clicks the buy now or register now, I think one of the best things you can do, and I see major organizations doing it all the time, and that is asking as part of the form. You can't click submit until you have checked a box or filled in a field of where have you seen us before? How did you find out about us? And one thing to remember is even if their first interaction with you was a Google search or their last interaction with you was perhaps word of mouth, social media is one of the key touch points in the sales funnel. And any business owner knows that it takes several touch points to get someone from the top of the funnel to the bottom of the funnel, right?
Pretty common knowledge, yep.
Yes. So social media is an essential touch point, especially speaking from my own experience as a millennial. I'm very hesitant to do business with anybody before I look them up on social media and find out what they're about. I mean, when it even came to applying for this very position, when I was searching, I looked you up, Paul. I looked you up on LinkedIn, and what made me
I would expect nothing less.
No, not at all. And I looked you up on LinkedIn, and I looked up your personal profile, and I looked at your activity, and I saw that you gave some fantastic advice to another job seeker that you didn't even know. You just took it upon yourself to share some wisdom. And that piece of engagement that you did on social media, combined with, right, all of the beautiful efforts I saw your organization doing for nonprofits, made me say, this is a worthwhile company to work for, and I would like to be a part of that team. So the idea that social media doesn't drive conversions is based in ignorance and lack of data. And I think the best thing to do to combat that is to make it a part of your intake form, to make it a part of your registration form. Ask where did they find you? And where have they interacted with you? You could even ask point blank, have you seen our social media? Check the platforms you've seen us on. Because even if it's not the second to last touch point, it's there in the list. Like I said, research can back me up on this. People care about the values of an organization, and the best place to find out about those values is not just on the about page, which is very manicured, has gone through several rounds of editing, right? Is definitely worthwhile to have on a website, but your social media gives that about page and that mission statement credibility. So if you're not seeing conversions, you are either A, not tracking them, right? You're not taking stock of who is actually doing work with you because of having interacted with you on social media. But the other question too is, if you're not succeeding on social media, you probably need to reevaluate your strategy. Something is not clicking with your audience. Your content may be lackluster. Maybe you're not doing it consistently enough. There are a million reasons if we dive into social media strategy about why your strategy may be failing. But that would be my first question to ask is if you are performing well on social media and you're consistently gaining new followers, social media is not your problem. There's something down the line of the funnel that is causing a sale to not convert. Because as you said, Paul, social media while it is trying to find footing in the e-commerce world, especially Instagram, it is not primarily for sales. It is definitely a driver of sales, but it is more for awareness and broadening that awareness and building a loyal following in a community.
That's such an important point to make. And it's something that we try to drill into potential clients right in the early onset so that they're not disappointed when they're not getting sales, using that as a primary key performance indicator. And I promised myself I wouldn't get too technical with this social media episode because I want to save it for another one down the line. But I am going to take a 30-second tangent. You would explain that. Are people really tracking it? And is there a intake form where it says, hey, where did you learn about us? And it could be multiple places, as you mentioned. It could be social media, could be an email newsletter. The culmination of those touch points is really what matters. But we can put in what's called a UTM code. I don't even know what that stands for. I think it's universal something. So tracking something. Somebody's going to buzz me on that later. But UTM codes are put on after a URL. And then you can put in a code, basically where they come from. We put Facebook or whatever. What campaign was it? And then when they click on, say, the donate button on the site, it's got that UTM code built into the URL. And so using their Google Analytics software, they could easily track that. And that's automated. So they don't have to think about it in the intake form. Although I still like that because it's not ever like one place, right? That's just the last place.
Right. And that UTM code is usually associated with one individual post. Right.
Exactly.
Or one event, or it can be fairly limiting. I've also noticed, too, that if you look at your website's analytics, they will track sources for you and they will tell you how many visitors came from Facebook or LinkedIn, and where people are accessing your site from, whether or not it's a direct Google search or from a site that has cited you. So there are definitely ways to track that data. And if you're not seeing conversions, right, we need to learn about how are you tracking it? How are you measuring that rate?
Yeah, and it's important, right? It's basically how you're determining ROI as well, in addition to engagement and growth and all that. So, well, we learned a lot here. I would pose this: what is the holy grail? What is like the best possible scenario for a generic type of a post?
A generic? Do you mean non-monetized? Do you mean organic?
Yeah, non-monetized.
Sure. So your in my experience, the most successful organic posts are the ones that peel back the curtain, like we talked about, that give a face to the organization. So that's photos of events. People are the bread and butter of social media. Photos with people, videos with people outperform other types of posts by incredible numbers on average. And I've noticed that because the market is changing and that we want to see what an organization values, and we want to agree with those values, many people want to see a happy team. Right. So if your team is happy and you're sharing that on social media, that, in my experience, will perform exceptionally well. I've never seen a post like that perform below average. I would also say, right, in terms of what is like the golden rule of social media, it's you get out of it what you put into it 100%. Right. You want a healthy variety of content. If all you're doing is posting, office parties, it's going to get old, right? You need to accompany that cultural post with posts that make you stand out amongst your competition.
Well, this is also going back to strategy too, right?
Right. Absolutely. Being deliberate and thoughtful. The other piece of advice that usually makes people cringe just a little bit, but it's absolutely true, is monitor your competitors. What are they doing? What's working for them? And don't copy
Yeah,
them.
that's good.
Right. Because if you copy them, that's blatantly obvious. Right. But what you can do is say, how can I make it even better? How can I make this apply to my own organization, and how can we incorporate these successful strategies into our own? How can we make it our own? So when I say you get out of it what you put into it, what I am referring to is not only time, effort, skill, but also observation. If you are not actively using social media as a user, you are not going to be able to dexterously use it in favor of your brand. So social listening is extremely important. And social listening, when we usually speak about it, we're talking about paying attention to how folks are discussing our brand on social media. But I believe to do it effectively, you need to be social listening in general about what are the trending conversations surrounding your industry, not just your brand, your industry, and your industry's place in your community in the world. So just being aware as well, and using that awareness to drive your content strategy. All of those things come into play for a successful social media presence. And if you're not doing those things, you will find that social is not driving conversions, as we discussed earlier. You need to walk into it knowing that it is an effort that is worth undertaking.
Well, that sounds exhausting. I think is my best word for that. I mean, you're talking about looking at competitors or benchmarking against like organizations. You're talking about what's resonating, whether it's tone or voice, and the types of posts you're doing, having a strategy to back that up, when to schedule it because you want the most eyeballs to see it. There's got to be an easier way to do this. And so that's bringing us to our next topic, tools. What tools are out there? Do you like them? Should we be using them?
Beautiful. Absolutely. I think tools are fantastic. They are, and they're getting even better. They're getting better and better. I remember when I first started in social media, the organization I worked for had a very minimal marketing budget, and especially not a fancy one for social media. So I was doing everything manually back then. So I can absolutely tell the burgeoning organization the power of a spreadsheet, right? The power of a spreadsheet, right. And there were no tools to pre-schedule posts back then, not even natively on the platforms. So I had to set alarms in my phone that said post now. Okay. And so it can be done. It is not impossible, but the tools that have been developed since then have really become such a convenience, a real help. You can't trust them entirely to do the work for you. That's not how it works. But
what are some of the ways that it can?
Sure. Yeah. But yes, you can absolutely use them to make your life easier. So just to compare to when I started this and I had no fancy tools, the way I determined before AI could tell you when the best time of day was to post was every month when I looked over the analytics, I would look at the most successful posts and what times of day they were posted. And then I would duplicate that the following month and find patterns in where were the most successful times. And now AI will do that for you, especially with tools like Sprout Social, and Hootsuite, I believe, does so as well. And that is such a fantastic bonus feature on these management softwares, is they take out a lot of the legwork. They will automatically garner that data and recommend the best times to post on certain days of the week.
What do they consider the best time? Is it the time that the most people will see it, or?
Yes. So it's anticipating the best time based on trends. So it can't give you a foolproof, this post will absolutely be seen by this many people. It cannot guarantee you that. And neither can Facebook ads. Facebook ads can only give you a rough estimate. And that estimate can be quite a large range of people, right? But you want that high end to be as high as possible. So you want to optimize ads, et cetera, to reach that max number. So the AI is designed to track patterns of success. And so it will make its recommendations based on the data that it finds. And it is extremely useful to be able to incorporate that while making a social media strategy. It just gives your content an extra boost, so to speak. The other thing that's beautiful about, my favorite social media management platform is Sprout Social, because of its incredible variety of tools that are very well thought out and frequently being updated based on user feedback. One thing I really appreciate about Sprout is how much they go out of their way to provide free training to people who are using their software.
That's important.
And it's extremely important because, right, I can have an entire toolbox in front of me, but I only know how to use the wrench. Well, then look at all of this missed potential, right? Whereas Sprout Social says, here's the entire toolbox, and now we're going to teach you how to use everything in it. I think that they do a fantastic job with educating their user base. I have also had a lot of good experiences with their customer service, which is extremely helpful because as much as I personally love and am fascinated by social media platforms, as many social media managers will tell you, customer service on each platform is dismal at best. And you can't really even blame the platform for that because literally billions of people are using each of these platforms every day. I mean, the amount of customer service reps that they would need to employ, which frankly, I wish they would, to manage all of it, right? It's astronomical. It's astronomical and it's global. So to have a Sprout Social customer service rep actually be there to help you, it is an amazing comfort just to know that they're there for you.
So you like Sprout.
I love Sprout.
And the tools that you use in Sprout. So you mentioned AI for the best time of day.
Yes.
What other tools do you use for?
So I also use their tools for tracking my analytics.
Analytics and reporting.
Yes, I love the competitors feature. As I said earlier, right, tracking your competitors and seeing how you measure up is very important as a success metric, right? Because your industry will perform differently on different platforms based on your specialty. I mean, a perfect example of this is one of my more successful clients is in a real feel-good field, right? And that's helping the homeless. I mean, I think it's wonderful. I admire the organization. I don't mean to diminish what they're doing by any stretch, but it might as well be the Hallmark Channel of social media, right? It's a ton of feel-good content. And they do a lot of wonderful work, and they do a great job of pulling back the curtain and being authentic and open. And they're a great client to work with for that reason. So their performance on social media is consistently growing and seeing success versus and they stand out amongst the crowd, amongst their competitors. But at the same time, right, their competitors in similar fields are also seeing similar levels of success. I will say, however, I shouldn't say competitors because they're a not-for-profit. They are consistently beating other organizations in terms of their stats. I'd like to, give myself a pat on the back for that, and also them. Their marketing team is really great to work with. So our mutual efforts are leading to them sticking out amongst that crowd. But right, like I said earlier, that's a really feel good.
When you say beating, it almost sounds like it's a little friendly competition. It
absolutely is.
Because you can have 500% growth, and is that good for that month or not? So when you be able to measure that against other like organizations, you could say, hey, that is really good. Or no, they did 1,000%. So we didn't really quite hit the mark as everybody else did. So it's got to be that friendly competition that is a win-win for everybody.
Absolutely. And but my point being, to go back to my earlier point, right? Different industries, different success metrics. But I have another client who whose primary competitors, these big businesses in that industry who are not taking advantage of social media at all. And so his metrics are insane compared to his competitors. And that's also wonderful to see because he is placing himself where his competitors are not, right? So when someone goes to social media to learn more about his service that he offers, they're going to find him before they'll find other people. And what else is nice too is when I see a downslope, sometimes, right, it's inevitable. You'll see some numbers go down, some numbers go up every month. But what's nice about tracking competitors is I've noticed that if our numbers go down, so did everybody else's. So that tells me that there was something trending that was more important, basically meaning it wasn't just us. There was something greater at hand. Like, for instance, when this latest controversy with Twitter/X, right? And all of this hubbub about what is Elon going to do with Twitter? Where is it going to go? There was a lot of uncertainty on that platform. And I noticed consistently across my accounts that we were losing followers on Twitter, but gaining them on LinkedIn. That was a pattern I noticed. So you can't take these stats at face value. You do have to know where they are in the landscape to give them more context.
Everything context is in context. Yeah. I mean, you can't be having significant growth month after month after month without having phases. So yeah, I think I get that. What was your, because we're coming up on on our time here, what was your proudest moment, or maybe that's the way to put it, maybe your biggest success in social media, let's say over the last couple of years?
Sure, absolutely. Well, it was a huge honor to help Habitat of Humanity Illinois and their social media presence. We actually saw 1,000% growth on their social media, which was a number that I didn't think we could hit. 1,000%. It was beautiful, tremendous to be able to help an organization in that respect and to see that kind of growth. It's very fulfilling to help a cause in this regard and see them get that kind of engagement. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, that is huge. What is your best advice for a marketer?
Never stop learning, never shy away from a challenge. This landscape will only continue to change, right? If I keep bringing them up, but if Twitter and /X and Threads and Be Real are any indication, right? Social media is not going anywhere. While the future of the established social media platforms may be in question in 5-10 years, social media itself as a means of communication and connection and marketing is not going anywhere. So that means stay on top of trends. Part of my daily routine is to not only pay attention to what is happening in terms of marketing trends on platforms, but to watch the news, to pay attention to what's happening in the world, and especially as it pertains to your clients, because you need to know how your clients and their organizations fit into the community and the greater world. Funny enough, I remember when all of the Ukraine stuff was happening. One of my clients said, I'm seeing sunflowers everywhere. Can we put a sunflower on my post? And I said, well, are we standing with Ukraine? He went, wait, what? I don't want to comment on that. I mean, I feel my own way about it, but I don't want to take I don't want to put out a message on that on social media. Why would you ask? And I said, well, because the sunflower is trending because of news of the war in Ukraine. And she had no clue. And that's okay. She doesn't have to. I do. It's my job to know. It's my job to know what things mean in the greater internet landscape. So pay attention, be informed, and choose your sources of information wisely. Make sure they're well respected, reputed, and of course, as middle of the road in regard to bias as possible, because you want facts, not opinions. You need to know what's happening in the greater landscape to make sure you're representing your clients with as much social awareness as possible.
Well said. Well said. Kind of brings me full circle to a point I never get tired of making. And I'll let you maybe make it this time, which is to an organization that's considering upping their game on social media or starting their game on social media, hiring in-house or doing it themselves versus hiring an agency. What would be the benefit for hiring an agency where you would be at the helm?
Absolutely. The benefit of an agency is that you aren't just hiring one person, you're hiring an entire team. I think it depends on the scope of your organization. I mean, some of the best clients I have an in-house marketing person who helps to guide me and provide me with content. But one marketing person, especially in a not-for-profit, is already wearing an exceptional amount of hats, right?
Yeah, so, they're doing a lot of things for sure.
Yeah. So to be able to lean on an agency, that broadens your team by several people with several skill sets. And as we discussed earlier, social media requires a variety of them. And there are absolutely times where I have, had to partner with our own graphic designer at PGM for content that was shared on social media, right? Or a videographer where I wasn't right on set. I received those assets, right? And then I strategically placed them on social media. So to have an entire team behind you through an agency gives you so much creative freedom. And it's actually a lot friendlier on your marketing budget than people, I think, assume. Because you just get so much more support going through an agency. It depends on the bandwidth of your organization, but I think many businesses and not-for-profits could benefit from partnering with an agency.
Yeah, well, many hands make light work, right? And you're bringing in lots of different perspectives, and you have a team to rely on and have support, right?
Absolutely.
So, point well made, Katrina. Thank you for spending time with us today and doing a little deep dive. I guess it's a little deep dive, right? It's we didn't get too technical, I hope, and maybe we will have an episode down the road where we can really do a technical dive into some of the mechanics behind what it is you do on a day-to-day basis. So thank you for joining us today. I appreciate your time. And until next time.
Thank you, Paul. My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Mission Matters podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.